if the season ended today. And it's different from last week. 4 SEC, 4 Big Ten, only 1 ACC, 1 Big 12. That's Arizona State getting the bye over Boise State. Many believe Boise State will get the bye if they take care of business against UNLV this Friday in the Mountain West Championship game. And we've got that on CBS. Danny, I want to start with South Carolina and Penn State because we're going to go through every matchup here. But why South Carolina over an Alabama team that beat them, over an Ole Miss team that beat them, and they have the same record?
And over a Miami team that's 10-2, and their losses are not bad. This one you cannot explain away other than saying I would love to see it. I think South Carolina is playing as good as anybody. It would be that hot team, which I don't have a problem with. As somebody who's seen NFL teams as a wild card get in at 9-7 historically, make a run to the Super Bowl like the New York Giants, and win it all. I think South Carolina is the one team that nobody wants to play. They've got Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart on the outside, 2 edge rushers, a defense that's playing outstanding, and a young quarterback in Lenore Sellers who is dynamic as it gets. I mean, we saw him take over the game by himself against Clemson. I think if you polled every coach, like who do you not want to play right now, it would be South Carolina. So I cannot give you, Chris, an analytic. I can't give you a metric. I can't give you a ranking. All I can say is I think they're one of the best 12 teams in college football, so I would give them the nod.
And what do you have them doing in this game at Penn State?
So because of that, I have them winning that game. I think this is a team. Oh, excuse me. Yes, I have them winning that game. Penn State is a really good football team, but I don't think they've faced the type of dynamic quarterback that they would face in Lenore Sellers. I think their defense is good, but there's great defenses that have not been able to control this quarterback. So I think he's somebody who's capable of going on the road and winning in a road environment, hostile environment, like Happy Valley. You know, the place would be absolutely rocking. It would be devastated. And the other thing that we don't know how it's going to impact teams, but we see teams that are going to be coming off a Big Ten championship game like Penn State. Meanwhile, South Carolina gets to sit home and rest. They would essentially be coming off a bye. I think that freshness, extra time to prepare, would help them get the road victory over Penn State.
Yeah, you wonder if Penn State's going to wish that they didn't make the Big Ten championship game because they could have just sat there and been in this spot anyway, a spot that they will likely be in if they lose, but then having to play that game in between. I mentioned Boise State. They are in with a victory over UNLV on Friday. That one's on Fox. We got the Conference USA championship game on CBS Sports Network and then the Big Ten championship game on CBS Saturday. Notre Dame doesn't have to play a conference championship game. How do you see this matchup between the Fighting Irish at home and Boise State?
The other thing, Chris, I think Boise State is overranked, overseeded, if you will. And I know the committee, I think people would be shocked by this. I don't think it would be too shocking if you saw Arizona State leapfrog them in the polls. And I know Iowa State's only a couple spots higher. I just feel like they would weigh a Power 4 conference championship game more than a Mountain West conference championship game. We'll have to see, though. I could be totally wrong on that one. That being said, I think this is where the road would end for Boise State. They've been a great story. Ashton Jeanty has been awesome. But if we've seen anything, it's Notre Dame's defense has been absolutely outstanding. We've seen Notre Dame do this to a couple teams, Army, Navy, top 25 teams that come in there, that get sent home packing. I think it would be a similar thing. I think Ashton Jeanty would be too overwhelmed going against that Notre Dame defense. So I think Notre Dame would get it done and would advance. All
right, Danny Kanell going through his first-round matchups as it would stand right now. You've got Indiana with only 1 loss having to go on the road to a 2-loss Tennessee.
This is one, too, where remember the first round when Indiana was still undefeated, they were hosting a playoff game? Not so much anymore. And I think, watching both these teams, Indiana got the taste of the Iowa State loss out of their mouth, right? They smoked Purdue. Purdue's not very good. And Tennessee did kind of the same thing against a better Vanderbilt team. Tennessee is a dangerous team. Their defense is good as anybody's with James Pierce off the edge, top 10 pick potentially in the NFL draft. And then Nico Iamaleava, he's the quarterback that is playing with a lot more confidence. He's been up, he's been down, but to finish the season with 4 touchdown passes against Vanderbilt, and then more importantly, this is where I think some of the campaigning and politicking takes place. They would be hosting. Could you imagine Knoxville, already one of the better home field environments in a playoff atmosphere? It doesn't matter who's coming to town. I think it would be a little bit too overwhelming for Indiana, who I think would keep it close, but I think Tennessee would pull away.
And that would be the farthest south that you would have a game in your bracket right now, Tennessee, because you got another Big Ten team hosting. And, man, what a matchup this would be. Ohio State at home against Georgia. Danny, I think a lot of people had this as their national championship game going into the season.
Yeah, and now that we've seen, Georgia's got 2 losses. They're not horrible. Almost had the 3rd loss had it not been for the 8 overtime thriller where they get the win against Georgia Tech. And Ohio State, the devastating loss against Michigan. I've got Ohio State advancing through – no, I don't. Who do I have? I'm making sure I have this one right. I have Georgia advancing through this one. Here's why. I think that loss could linger for Ohio State. I mean, that is a devastating loss. We've seen the criticism already start for Ryan Day, for the Buckeyes. Will Howard's going to get so much heat and criticism for the interceptions that he threw in that game. Their defense is good, but the one thing I've seen from Georgia that I trust, they can win ugly. And I think Carson Beck, again, 5 touchdowns in that overtime thriller, but I think he's playing at a peak right now. He was shaky throughout the middle of the season, but I think he would be more than able to win this game. And I think Ohio State, there's a chance they still could win the college football the national championship. And that probably is the only thing that takes Ryan Day off that hot seat or potentially from being fired. But I think Georgia would get the best of them. I don't know how they recover from that loss.
We'll talk to a couple of our coaching carousel guys a bit later in the show about Ryan Day's future at Ohio State. As we move into Danny's quarterfinals, let's start with that game between Georgia and Oregon, who is your #1 overall seed. Who do you like?
I like the Ducks. We haven't even got to talk about them yet. And they're going to be tested in the Big Ten championship game, but I do think they beat Penn State. They'll have the bye week to relax. And this is where I think they stack up against everybody. They really haven't shown a weakness all season long. I mean, they've been consistent. They've got a defense that's physical that showed they could go toe-to-toe with Ohio State. They've got consistency at quarterback. They've got weapons on the outside. I just think Oregon's the most complete team in the country, and Georgia, I think, would go down in this matchup. So I like the Ducks to advance.
All right, Oregon, the only unbeaten team in college football heading into championship weekend. Let's go to your 2-7 game. That's Texas, who you have coming out of the SEC, taking on Tennessee. What shade of orange do you like?
Oh, I would love this matchup. Wouldn't this be fun? I mean, this would be an outstanding matchup. About a month ago, Chris, I said that I thought Texas A&M was the best team in the state of Texas. And, boy, Texas fans are not letting me live that down. I was wrong about that. And I think Texas, that defense showed up against Texas A&M where it was complete domination. I don't even think that's the score, 17-7, tells you how lopsided that game, and it was because of Texas's defense. I love how they're sprinkling in Arch Manning because Quinn Ewers has been good. He hasn't been great as a passer, and he's not that mobile as a quarterback. So they sprinkle a little Arch Manning in there. He gets a quarterback run for a touchdown there against the Aggies on the road. So I like Texas to advance in this one. I think Texas would take down Tennessee. I mentioned Nico earlier, how hot he's playing. I think that defense would get him and be able to throw him off his game. I trust Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, the two-headed monster at quarterback for Texas. So I think Texas would advance.
All right, next quarterfinal, and again, these are bowl games. These are no longer on campus. SMU getting the bye out of the ACC against Notre Dame.
This is a team nobody's talking about, Chris, and I think Rhett Lashley deserves more credit. Notre Dame has not truly been tested. I think SMU has. Their resume is one of the best out there. They beat a 9-3 Duke team that nobody talks about. Nobody gives them any credit for that. They're able to go on the road and win. I think they do get the best of Miami in that ACC championship game. Even if they don't, I think they should advance. But they've been battle tested. I think their defense is better than people give them credit for. I think they're able to put points up on that Notre Dame defense, which has been so good, much like USC did. But unlike USC, I think Kevin Jennings protects the football, doesn't throw a couple pick sixes. So I think SMU shocks the world and advances past Notre Dame.
Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3 all advancing. How about number 4, Arizona State out of the Big 12, taking on the Cinderella story here, South Carolina?
So you caught on to my theme here, Hassel. This is why I wanted him in there, because I think South Carolina is capable of not only getting and being one of the top 12 teams, but actually winning some games there. This does some damage. And as great a story as Kenny Dillingham has been, this is a good football team. Cam Scatterbo has been awesome. Their running back, Sam Levitt, has been really solid, too. I just think South Carolina would be too much. Defensively, I think they would overpower them. And then, as I mentioned, Lenore Sellers has proven he can score on anybody. I do think the Big 12 is the weakest of the Power Four. I think you would see a clear advantage there across the board. So I would have South Carolina knocking them off.
In South Carolina, I mean, I call them Cinderella story. They probably would be favored against Arizona State if they played right now, though they are the 12 seed in Danny's bracket. So here's how his semifinal sets up. Going to keep it going here. Gamecocks against the only unbeaten team in college football, Oregon.
This is where it would come to an end, Chris. And that's because, again, I mentioned it before, Oregon, most complete team in the country. I think they would be able to shut down Lenore Sellers. And then more importantly, Dylan Gabriel, whenever he's getting pressured, whatever defense he's gone to go against, he's able to put up points. And they're a balanced attack. They're able to run the football as well to mix up that run and pass. I just trust them more than anybody out there. I think they're the most complete team. So I would have that Cinderella story coming to an end there.
Texas just beat Texas A&M. How about another team in their state, SMU, in the semis?
I think it would be a similar result. I think you'd see Texas just kind of overpower SMU. Boy, you talk about bragging rights for the state. Again, talking about the best team in the state of Texas. If this matchup does happen, to be able to beat your longtime rival you haven't played and then to beat like a lower, like little brother in SMU, what a phenomenal run it would be. But I do think the Longhorns would be capable of scoring on Rhett Lashley's team. And I think this one could be a shootout, which I would love to see. I think it'd be a fun game, but ultimately I think Texas would get the best of them.
They have not played since 1995. Let's go to the championship game. According to Danny, it's Texas, number 2, against Oregon, number 1. Who do you have winning it all at this point?
Oh, Hassel. So this one, I think this would be a great matchup. I think it really would. I think this one would be probably maybe a pick'em game, but it would come down to the wire. I've said it on here. It feels like a theme. This is Dan Lanning's coronation. Like, of him as one of the top coaches in college football, I would have the Oregon Ducks beating the Texas Longhorns. They're just too talented. And I look at the inconsistency of Quinn Ewers. I was complimenting him early, but I do think he's been a little up and down. He did have the pick 6, which kept Texas A&M in the game there in College Station. And I don't trust him in this environment. He's good, but also he's been banged up a ton. He's got that ankle that he's been nursing where he's trying to play through it. I think that would catch up to him. And Oregon has answers for everyone across the board. So I've got the Oregon Ducks winning the national championship.
All right, Danny Kanell playing hurt today. Thank you for not coming in and getting your
but seriously,
measles all over. No, he doesn't have measles. Just a cough, just a little cough. But thank you, Danny.
Oh, that is disgusting, Danny. First, he has Texas and Oregon, which is my personal HE double hockey stick of the national championship.
Why don't you like Oregon?
Dylan Gabriel.
Oh, come on.
I love Dylan Gabriel. I just don't like that he's not on my team anymore.
Okay. Yeah,
and
Oregon's
he blows his nose.
Oklahoma's kind of the farm system for the big boys now.
Apparently so.
Cover 3 podcast, Danny and the gang. Will get you set for championship week beginning on Friday with championship games.
The Cavs aren't about to make the same mistake twice against the Celtics. Our experts will give you their biggest